Headers in Canvas work a little bit differently than you'd be used to with the headers in Bubble. And in this video, we're going to talk about how they work differently, how to create a new header, how to add elements, icons, buttons, that kind of thing to your headers, and also how to add workflows to your headers. So let's jump in. Contrary to creating your headers within the Bubble editor like you'd be used to, in Canvas you actually configure your headers via the admin portal. So you want to come down to the header and footer tab when you're logged in as an admin, and then you'll see that you have 3 headers by default. Okay, so we have an admin header, a standard header for users who are logged in. You can see that this preview of the header changes when I update it, and also one for logged out users. So just quickly, how does this work? If we go into our Bubble application and we go down to our header reusable element, you'll notice, well, there is only one header reusable element. Somehow we've got 3 headers, but inside of Bubble, we actually only have seemingly 1 header. The way that this works is Canvas will actually route the correct header elements into this single reusable element. So think of this reusable element as sort of a window, and you have 3 different header options by default, and any one of those can be routed to be displayed through this reusable element. And the way that works is via a variable in this pop-up hidden variables. This is the only thing that you have to worry about here. And then we've got this group called current header, okay? And in this current header variable group, we've got some conditions. And all that's happening there is, depending on the condition, we are showing a specific header. So if I jump into the search, okay, we're actually showing the header, right, which is a data type based on this ID. So I can go into the database to show you that. And you can see we've got 3 headers here, okay? And those correspond to those headers that you were able to see within the admin portal. Okay, so we've got these headers living in the database. That's the input. On the output side, we've got a single reusable element as our header. And then in between, we've got some routing logic, some conditional logic that, depending on some conditions that you as the app creator are going to define, we're going to route a particular header onto the user's view. So that's how headers work in a general sense within Canvas, but how do we actually create our own header? So we do that via the admin portal. Come over here and click new, and we'll create a new header. And let's say, for the sake of argument, we just want a header that is going to be custom to the account page. It's only going to show when we're on the account page, and it's going to look a little bit different than our normal headers, okay? We've just created this header. If we look in the database, we now have a new header here called account. So now let's add some logic for when to show this header. So we're going to open up our pop-up hidden variables again and come back to this variable current header. And let's add a new condition here for when to show this header. So like I said, we want to show this header only when the user is on the account page. Okay, so now we're on this account page. We want to be able to show our new header whenever we're on this account page. So I'm going to go into the Bubble editor, and I'm going to come back to this variable current header. I'm going to add another condition here, and that condition is going to be when the current page name is account. I'm going to change the data source for this variable group and do a search for a header. And then under the ID, we want to grab the ID for our new header, okay, which we can find easily in this ID field. So search for headers where the ID is equal to account, right? And that's of course giving us a list of headers, a list that's only 1 item long, but we still need to grab that first item for this expression to be valid. Let's go back to our account page, and if I refresh now, notice the change in the header. All right, we've got a new header here now, like all of those buttons and things, all of those icons are now disappeared. And we can be even more sure that this is working if we actually add a new element to this header. Let's add a single text element to our header. Let's say this is the account page, and you can ignore all of this stuff for now. We just want to make sure that we set something, but we'll go through what all of this does in a moment. Now you can see we have this new text element that's appearing on our account page. So that's how to create a new header. What about adding or editing the elements within that header? Well, we sort of gave you a sneak peek just then when we added this text, okay? There's 4 different types of elements that we can add to our header. So the first obviously is a text. So that's just basically a text link. We'll add one, let's say a button that takes us to like the terms and conditions. We can add an icon if we want, but here in the action type, this is really where the meat of this header sandwich lives. So we can set some kind of action that runs whenever this text element in the header is clicked, right? We can open a marketing page. So a marketing page, if you're not aware, is a special kind of page that you can build within Canvas, which is for creating landing pages, frequently asked question pages, pages with a lot of static content. So you can add blocks of content and configure the information within those blocks. So we could open one of those marketing pages. We can also go to an internal bubble page, right? So those are the pages that you actually have defined, like you're used to within the bubble editor. These pages here. You can choose to open those in a new tab. You can also open an external link, right? So just type in any URL that you would like here. Or run a bubble action. That's something that we're going to get to at the end of this video, so hold tight to figure out how those work. For now, we're going to open an internal bubble page, we're going to open up our legal page and open it in a new tab. So you can see now we've got this new option up here, which if clicked, opens up this sort of standard default legal page. And note that because we're no longer on the account page, we're seeing a different header. A different header is being routed to that header element because there's some different conditional rules now operating. All right, so that's text. Now we can create icons in exactly the same way. We basically just choose some icon that we want to act as the trigger. And then we choose the action. So let's have this take us to our home page in a new tab. All right, you can see it appear now in that preview. All right, and then if I test this out, then here I am on the account page. I've now got this new icon, which I can click to be taken to this index page in a new tab. So that's all working great. We've also got buttons. Again, same principle. We've got 2 different types here, a fill or an outline. Right, I give some display text, I run an action. You get the idea. You can see it appear now in the preview, and in the real app, we now have this new button. Now, the other cool thing to note here is that this header is totally mobile responsive. So here we are on a small view, right? This is what it looks like on the full page. And if I go down to the mobile view, then we'll keep some icons, but those buttons and text are actually now moved to this mobile menu. So Canvas handles all of that responsive behavior for you automatically. And one thing you will notice though is this profile picture here, which actually has its own drop down. So if you're familiar with Canvas already, this will be familiar to you, this profile drop down. This is actually part of Bubble. You don't configure this via the admin portal, you configure this via the Bubble editor. So let me show you. Within your header, you've got this group focus mini group here, okay, and that's just going to consist of some buttons that you can configure. If I twirl this open, right, there's some placeholder buttons here that you can configure, right? Just select them to be visible on page load. Maybe you change the text here to say something like, let's say go to Canvas, right? All right, and then on this group placeholder, we can link this up now with this custom menu item 1. And then if I refresh the page, right, we've now got this extra option here. And I can of course attach any workflows that I want to this new group here. Now you can actually remove this profile drop down altogether via the admin portal. So you just want to come over to this logged in state and toggle it off. Okay, and that's going to remove it from this header altogether. Right, now everything that I've just been talking about has been concerning navigation, but what if you actually want to attach some workflow, some logic to the elements in your header? Obviously, they're all being configured within the admin portal here, so it's not obvious how you would actually connect logic. Well, the way that you do this, if we change this about button to be, let's say, a feedback button. Let's say for the sake of argument, we want when this button is clicked to launch a pop-up on the screen, okay? That's gonna require us to create some kind of custom workflow to do that. So what we do is, instead of having an action type be one of these first three, we're gonna choose run bubble action, okay? Now, the way that this works is you actually need to define a custom ID for this action. So let's say we want this to be give feedback, okay? And I'm just gonna copy that to my clipboard because we're gonna need it shortly. And then I'm gonna save these changes. Right, now let's go into our bubble editor onto the header page. And within the workflow tab, I wanna create a new custom event. And that custom event, let's just call it show feedback pop-up. All right, and there's only going to be a single action, but of course you can have as many actions as you want, and that action is going to be to show a pop-up. Now we don't actually have this pop-up yet on the page, so let me add that via the extension here. I just created this new pop-up on the page, so now I'm going to just connect up that action to show it. All right, and then the last thing that we have to do is come over to this action here, run bubble action triggered, okay? And add an action to the end of this, which is going to be to trigger that custom event that we just created. Show feedback pop-up. And all we have to do is make sure that we have an only when condition present here, which says that when this JavaScript to bubble, okay, so that's a variable that's present within this workflow, when the value of that is equal to the ID for the action that we created. Remember, within this admin portal, right, when we're configuring this header, we've got this action trigger give feedback. That is exactly what we want to paste into this condition here. All right, so let's see if that works. We've got this feedback button, I click that, and now this pop-up appears. All right, so that behavior is really anchored to this run bubble action triggered workflow here. And if you look closer, you'll see there's some other actions here that closely resemble the one that we just created, okay? We've got one show menu from a widget shopping cart. Obviously, we're triggering a workflow here from a reusable element. That's what's going on with all of these. And these are actually just corresponding to these icons up here, which have some default behavior that comes out of the box with Canvas. So like if you click this icon, the search appears. If you click the messages icon, these messages appear. If you click this bell icon, the notifications appear, right? So all of that behavior just comes out of the box with Canvas. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper, you can read in the documentation about how to configure and customize these actions. All right, that's how headers work in Canvas. Hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments below. I'll also link to the documentation for the header in the description. Otherwise, happy bubbling.